What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we're looking at a setup for Jayber that can essentially do, like, I would say 99% of the content in the game right now. Previously, just before season 3, I created a video where I talked about the changes that I would like to see in Jayber, and with the rework at the start of season 3, some of those changes were in fact done. Of course, Jayber now has a much easier way of placing down turrets, and you can have a maximum of 3 turrets live at once, which is one more that we could have before using his Descendant module, which essentially gave us 2 assault turrets. So these Descendant modules are gone now, and basically by default Jayber has 3 turrets, which can be any combination of assault turrets and support turrets, or just assault turrets, or whatever. And of course, the damage of these turrets have been further on beefed up as well in the rework at the beginning of season 3. So Jayber kind of fucking bangs now. I mean, I had to check the date and make sure that it wasn't like April Fools or something like that. But yeah, it's 2025, it's fucking August, and Jayber is kind of banging. So yeah, you can use this setup to pretty much do all of the mobbing based content in the game right now. I've dipped into Purge as well with this, and while there's definitely Descendants that can do Purge a lot faster, it's just the fucking ease of it that's insane. Like, you literally just stand behind your turrets, they mow down everything, and then you move and you just kind of like move your little turret defense base to the next area and then just rinse and repeat. The enemies that run at you pretty much get mowed down by the turrets, and sometimes enemies that are standing a little bit outside the range of the turrets and like sort of lobbing bullets at them, you kind of like have to push up on them and put the turrets down closer to them to essentially kill them. But nonetheless, it's very, very comfortable and very, very low effort in a way. And basically I purposefully recorded this footage of me pretty much just standing around like a fucking idiot and just having my turrets like blow these enemies away. And yeah, it was pretty damn cool. I can't lie, there's really nothing to complain about. And yes, this obviously is also a setup that allows you to do the new Abyss boss. Again, there are definitely, I mean, I think there's sub 30-second times now with Nell, so Nell is absolutely abusing this boss. I'm sure there's other Descendants as well, but again, it's pretty much the fact that you just kind of like put your 3 turrets down, you keep them alive, and you basically move around in the boss fight, and yeah, your turrets just kind of like do all the work. So super happy with the changes that they made with Jayber. I really can't complain. I think that there's probably 1 or 2 more little adjustments that they could potentially make. Maybe with his new Descendant mods, there could be a way for you to essentially make the turrets mobile, so you never have to kind of like, you know, put them down again. They could basically become like attack drones or some shit. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, this build kind of bangs, and yeah, it's a very comfortable way of playing the game right now. I'm sure some of you guys will get a kick out of it. So let's have a look at the build. Okay, so starting us off, my objective here was also to make a build that does the mobbing content and the bossing content pretty much without having to change too much. There's definitely some optimization that can be done here in terms of making some things better. In other words, making him perform better in a bossing situation versus a mobbing situation. Things like swapping out your mutant cell and maybe changing some mods around and stuff. But I did want to create a build that pretty much does both those things, like I would say, equally well. And then of course, depending on what you want to use Jayber for, you can kind of like just chop and change a few things. Alrighty, so starting us off, first and foremost, we're using Power Beyond as our trigger module. Power Beyond is the hot shit right now. There's literally no reason to use any other trigger module just because you get this flat skill power increase, whether this interacts with your abilities or not. So it's just really good. I didn't experiment with other trigger modules, to be fucking honest, because this just performs so well and makes such a kind of like a really big difference in terms of your damage profile. So, you know, didn't really change that much with it. But I'm sure that some other trigger modules could also perform, I would say, decently well. That being said, I kind of feel like Power Beyond is made for Jayber in a way, so I do believe that it's a good fit because it uses global dots, and of course your assault turrets are global dots. So the aim of the build is essentially just always dropping down your assault turrets until you have 3, and then you basically use your multi-purpose gun to keep them alive and keep them going. And at the same time, you could switch to other guns and you can, you know, help mow the enemies down if you want, or help deal damage to the boss that you're fighting, or you can just let your turrets do the, you know, talking. Now, in terms of the modules that we're using, we are using some survivability mods, all right? And these are the ones that you could essentially peel back from if you are only doing mobbing content, because you need a little bit less survivability. But the bottom line is your turrets inherit your survivability. So if you build an exceptionally glass cannony fucking Jayber, then your turrets are also going to be glass cannony. And for normal mobbing content and normal bosses, that's not that big an issue. But if you're doing the Abyss boss, and if you're doing like fucking Axion planes or something like that, you're going to need this additional survivability, because the problem is the enemies are quite chunky and they also deal a lot of damage, so kind of like I have to sustain that shit. So in terms of the survivability that I'm referring to, we're using increased HP and we're using stim accelerant. Both of these give us more HP, and this HP is inherited by a turret, so good shit. Next thing we want to do is we want to actually be focusing on the range and the duration of our turrets as well. This is also super important. Their range was increased with the rework at the beginning of season 3. However, you kind of want more range on them because the range ain't that fucking great. All right, so the radius. So by using something like skill expansion, we get more skill effect range there, and by using skill extension, we get more duration. Now you have 3 stacks of turrets, so the point is with this skill extension here, we can see that our duration on the turret is 22 seconds and our stack cooldown is 15 seconds. So with managing the turrets and with correct usage of multi-purpose gun, you can essentially always keep your turrets up, and if one does fall off, you should have enough stock to essentially replace again. Next thing, we want to drop the cooldown down of the assault turret so that we can get them faster, as well as the cooldown of multi-purpose gun. And at the same time, we can dip into some additional damage, and we can do this through the use of focus on dimension, which gives us more dimension skill power damage, which is of course what the turret type is non-attribute dimension. So we can get focus on dimension, which also gives us skill cooldown minus 6.1%, and we can also use focus on non-attribute, because again, that's our element, and that gives us non-attribute skill power and skill cooldown minus 6.1%. So all in all, 12.2% of skill cooldown. Then we also stack in some, since we're not building crit, right? Because Jayber's kind of got like shitty crit stats to begin with, so it's kind of better just to build him for raw damage. We are going to be using the 2 amplification mods, which is dimension amplification, which gives us dimensional skill power modifier, and non-attribute amplification, which gives us non-attribute skill power. So again, those 2 just upping our damage profile. We are also slapping in non-attribute Syncytium, because that gives us a little bit more of non-attribute skill power, as well as critical hit resistance, which doesn't really fucking matter. And then last but certainly not least, we're also slapping in Spear and Shield, which gives us even more survivability in the form of defense, as well as a little bit of additional skill power as well. So again, important here, your defense and your HP both are inherited by your turrets. So Spear and Shield kind of like also gives the turret survivability, which I think makes sense. Now, I just want to show something quickly, because you'll see that this is my boss build, right? This is the same build that I used to kill or do all the footage, right? I just want to show you that if we switch between these 2 tabs, there's no difference. So I use exactly the same build for both. Again, like I said, there is optimization which can absolutely be done here. I think you can, for example, for the mobbing build, maybe take one of the HP mods out and, I don't know, put something else in there, which could give you a little bit more damage or so. What could be possibly useful is maybe something like, let me see, what would be a good thing to throw in there. Let's see, if we go to ultimate, I think, I mean, possibly you could get away with multi-talented, because that gives a skill cooldown, so you can get your turrets back even faster. So that could be an option. If you want to slap in dangerous ambush, that could be good too, because the point is you pretty much one-tap enemies as soon as they spawn in. And the enemies are going to be running at the turret, which means they're not targeting you, which means you get all of this additional skill power. So yeah, that's also a good option. But yeah, there are some things that you can replace for the mobbing build. But for the sake of this video and the footage that I recorded, I kept it exactly the same, because I wanted you to just basically spend just the same amount of catalyst on everything, and then essentially be able to do all of the content that I showed in the stuff that I recorded. Okay, so after this, let's talk a little bit about weapons. I would say Peacemaker is kind of like a necessity with Jayber, Not only is it a fantastic stat stick in the form of like it gives you a lot of additional sprint speed because of the weapon cores that you can put in, but the main reason why it is dope as fuck is of course because of its unique ability that says when using a dimension or a fusion skill, it grants you single reload for peace. Single reload for peace is a massive damage buff for you as well for non-attribute skill power, and so this is a great way. It's basically like the secret garden for Jayber, so really good thing to have. I think there's probably a way that you could still play this without fucking Peacemaker, but Peacemaker makes a massive difference, so I absolutely advise you to run this as your stat stick. Then for some of the footage you saw me using like Python, and Python's also a really good combo because Python's unique ability also feeds into the strength of Jayber, and that's because it has a unique ability called Prey that says that when you hit enemies in their weak point, you inflict this debuff on them, which can stack up to 28 times, and this decreases the non-attribute resistance and toxin resistance of the target that you're hitting. And you're dealing non-attribute damage, so that makes your turrets hit harder. And in the case of, like, let's say if you're doing the Void Abyss boss, right, that boss is weak to toxin, which is why we're using this. All right, why we're using Python, because my Python is configured for toxic damage, so that damage then also deals more. So it's a way to help out your turrets and basically deal more damage. All right, so in this case, just to quickly show you, the Peacemaker is just a stat stick, so you can throw Defense Master and Tactical Change on there just to help out a little bit with survivability. You don't even have to do that, but this is just another way to give yourself a lot more defense. When you switch from your Peacemaker to Python and you start shooting the enemy, you get all this additional defense. And then in terms of the Python, this is my setup for Python, which is like a toxic based Python. So I've got separate videos on Python specifically for this. This is a very old build of mine, but it's old and tested and true and lovely. And so this focuses on dealing poison damage and dealing weak point damage, and that's basically what this is. So I'm not going to spend much time on this. Go ahead and screenshot the mods and everything. If you're looking for explanation about this Python build, it's on my channel. It's the most recent Python video. In terms of the weapon cores and the substats on here, I'm going firearm, rounds, and then obviously sprint speed and grappling hook. And then I'm going rounds, weak point, toxic, and firearm. Again, not going for crit or crit damage at all, but basically just going into weak point damage and essentially raw damage. Of course, you could go even more into weak point damage, or you could go more into an element. But this is the way that I set it up ages ago, and I didn't change anything with it. Like I said, I basically just carry it in as an additional debuff tool for my turrets to basically deal more damage. Next up is the Arche Tuning board. And for that, I need to potentially maybe just quickly do this. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. Okay, so yeah, I would say this is fairly standard setup. This is the one for the bossing setup. So this is the Void Abyss boss setup, okay? And this you can see here that I'm getting additional HP, again, just to stack up and have as much HP as possible for my turrets then as well. But we're picking up as much skill power as we can. We go up here, we get the additional damage to Colossus. And we get the skill power, we go up here, we get the cooldown, and we go up here, and for our mutant cell, we're using final preparations. Now, final preparation says when attacking enemies with the fourth skill, it grants final preparations to self. What this is this is a buff that gives you skill power and gives you skill effect range. Now, how do you proc this? You'll see at the beginning of the Void Abyss boss fight, what I do is I go in and I drop my 3 medical turrets. After I drop my 3 medical turrets, I use my 4th ability to essentially proc this, and then after that, when I summon my 3 normal turrets, they now have this additional skill power as well as this range, and that's basically how you proc it. This has a 30-second cooldown, and you can reapply this a couple of times during the fight by just doing the same sort of like move, right? So you throw out the 3 turrets, you destruct them with the 4th ability, and then you throw out your normal turrets, and boom, boom, boom. So this is a nice little skill effect range boost as well as a skill power. It's a great opener at the beginning of a fight, and you don't have to do this multiple times in the fight, but this is a nice little damage boost for you. All right, now in terms of the mobbing setup, kind of like exactly the same. We don't pick up the HP. We get more skill power. Of course, we don't get the Colossi damage, but we do get the additional range. As usual, we go up here to enhance skill cooldown. And then for the mutant cell, we're using non-attribute cohesion. We don't have to go final preparation on mobbing content. That's fucking silly. And so then we can just use non-attribute cohesion, which says that you get a nice non-attribute skill power buff, 3 stacks of it for enemies that you kill, and so therefore it's a nice way to just boost up your turrets and just make them fry enemies all day long. Okay, last Oh shit, we didn't even do reactor and external components. Let's quickly dive into that. Of course, reactor, you want a materialized phase reactor because you want non-attribute and you want dimension. Okay, it is super important for you, right, that you should match up, all right, so that you have the weapon type mounted for the reactor so that you can get that additional 60% damage and not just deal 100. You'll notice here, like for example, I don't have submachine gun mounted, and this is something that I only noticed after I had recorded the footage. So I was actually taking like a 60% minus to my damage in a lot of the times when I was running around with the fucking Python, which is like fucking dough on my side, but still at the same time you can see just how much damage the build is pushing out then. And of course that means that once I mount submachine gun on this reactor, then I'm gonna get like 60% additional damage when I'm running around with the Python, especially on the Abyss boss fight, which will definitely increase my kill time, and well, not increase, decrease my kill time, and basically make it a lot more impressive. So there's already one way that you could improve on the build that I just did not see at all until at the time of actually recording this. So you'll see that my substats on the reactor are skill cooldown and skill duration up because I want the turrets to last longer and I want them to come back quicker. If you are happy with your cooldown and duration times without these substats, then of course you could squeeze more damage, right, into the build by essentially getting yourself non-attribute skill power and dimension to roll on this. I like this reactor. It's a let's call it a support reactor because it helps me out with skill cooldown and duration, which are two things which you want to be managed on this build. So it's one of the reasons why I picked it. In terms of external components, look, you can absolutely use Slayer. And in my previous Jayber video, I said that the reason why I preferred Slayer over Enlightened Mage was because of the time that it took you to activate the towers. You would oftentimes not be able to proc the 3 stacks needed to activate Truth on Enlightened Mage so that you can get the additional non-attribute skill power. However, now that you can plant 3 towers, that's not a fucking problem anymore. So you can absolutely proc this super easy, and this is a massive damage increase for us once you have Truth procced at 84% additional non-attribute skill power. So fucking huge. In terms of the substats on this, first of all, your mods on there should absolutely be max HP and defense. Try to get as close to gold as you can, so purples are all good. I don't have that on everything here, but at least I have purples and 1 gold max HP. Again, this gives you decent survivability, massive defense here of 73k, and like almost 16,500, well, almost 17,000 HP, which again is inherited by your turrets, which is super good. Otherwise, your substats, you want max HP, MP recovery out of combat, you want max MP recovery in combat, you want defense with MP recovery modifier, and last but certainly not least, here you can go like toxin resistance and fucking max shield or max shield recovery modifier, whatever the process is, kind of like doesn't really matter, but max shield recovery modifier on here is okay. Okay, that brings us to, I believe, Inversion Reinforcement is the last thing that we have to look at. Jesus, builds are getting so crazy now with the amount of shit that you have to show. So over here, you can see I'm still stuck on 12 out of 30 Invasion Reinforcer. That means that I can get everything that I want. But obviously the most important thing for us to pick up here is the toxic focus rounds. We can help us out on the Abyss boss, all right? And then here we want quantum domain, okay? And so to get quantum domain, we have to take one of these 4, all right? And in this case, the only one that really makes sense is deploy resonance device. The other 2 are weapon specific, and this is specifically for firearm builds or gun builds. So the only one that really makes sense to pick is deploy resonance. But these are the 2 that I selected. Again, this is what I was using in all of the footage that I recorded, and this gets us access to quantum domain, which we absolutely want, and then basically Bob's our uncle. And that's it for the build. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Jayber rework. Are you enjoying Jayber? Are you playing him? Which other Descendant are you super excited for them to rework? I hear a lot of people saying Haley. I think she's due for like some changes to her kit to make her faster. She's super fucking slow, which is a pity. She's one of my favorite Descendants. But yes, let me know in the comments down below what you would change, how you set your Jayber up, what you're doing in the game right now. Are you enjoying Season 3? Are you a little bit upset that it's not everything that you thought it would be? And so on and so forth. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all the support. As always, fucking cheers.